Welcome to the Secrets of Confident Women podcast, where you'll learn all the best tips, tricks, and practical techniques for building the confidence levels you've always wanted. With inspiring interviews, real-life examples, and game-changing insights, this podcast is for women who know that mastering the skill of confidence is one of the most important things they'll ever do.
Hello, everyone, and I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast with us again today. This is Jodie, and today I'm going to introduce you to an incredibly courageous woman, Angie Chaplin, who is going to talk to us about her journey to rebuild herself and her confidence from a place of chaos, despair, and addiction. From the loss of a job she loved, the death of a close friend, combined with an unhealthy marriage that eventually ended in a difficult divorce, Angie's life was in chaos. She had lost her sense of self and, like so many of us, turned to alcohol as a way to cope with the pain and confusion. Adding to the perfect storm of struggles came career changes, moving to a new city, and a health crisis that led to a failed suicide attempt and multiple hospitalizations for severe alcohol use and withdrawal. Released from her fifth hospitalization in February 2020, she chose a commitment to sobriety, which currently stands at 505 days sober, which is so amazing. And so began the journey to rebuild herself and her confidence and rediscover her strength to turn obstacles into opportunities. Now, leveraging her journey from alcohol addiction to business owner, Angie is the founder and owner of Mindful Leadership, a coaching and consulting practice grounded in leadership research and guided by mindful behavior. She is a sought-after speaker, coach, and educator, and is one of only 50 certified masters of the Leadership Challenge. I know we will all get a lot of inspiration and learning from today's conversation. So I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Angie Chaplin to the Secrets of Confident Women podcast. Angie, welcome.
Thank you, Jodie. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Awesome. What a story. Well, the last 505 days, but probably longer than that. The last probably 2 to 4 years for you has been such a big challenge, such a big life challenge that I think so many of us find ourselves in at different stages when things go wrong, marriages go wrong, life goes wrong, jobs go wrong, things happen. We come to these points in our life that we're maybe not prepared for at the time. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Just like you said, Jodie, for many of us, it's a lack of understanding or a lack of leveraging what healthy coping mechanisms look like.
Yeah.
And whether it's some of the struggles that I went through or whether it's something in the course of a typical day, sometimes somebody pulls out in front of us in traffic and we might immediately feel enraged and start beeping the horn or shouting bad words at that person.
I've never done that, Angie.
Right. Of course not. And it's just, from my experience, it was a combination of unhealthy coping mechanisms simply because I lost my sense of self.
Yeah.
So even any other healthy ways that I had dealt with struggle or, unforeseen circumstances in the past, because I had lost really the essence of who I am as a person, all of that felt lost to me also.
Yeah.
And thrown in the mix were the other circumstances of, my friend's loss. And a lot of my identity was tied up in the job that I lost.
Yes.
So yes, it does. So when I lost that job and my friend's passing and the deterioration of my marriage, all of that just kind of combined to really begin the decade-long struggle with alcohol addiction.
Yeah. So it's really that combination, because in isolation, sometimes we can cope with different bits and pieces. But when we get that just avalanche of too many things to deal with in the one year or the one couple of years, it sort of wears you down, doesn't it? You probably can cope for a little while, but then just get exhausted from always being in that fight or flight mode, that coping place.
Yes.
And we look for other things to try to get us through.
Right. And at the time, I didn't tap into some of the healthy tools that I now have that I've learned through recovery, things like, mindfulness and meditation and exercise and yoga and talking and connection and all of the things that now I am very intentional about having as regular parts of my day. Yeah. So I don't wait until it's crisis mode to tap into these tools. I'm proactive about knowing what sets me off. Yes. So if I need to face a situation that makes me uncomfortable, and is something new or something I have a growing sense of anxiety about, I can work these tools into my preparation so that I don't find myself really at the end of a crisis. Yeah.
When we're at the coping part, when we're already through it, it's hard to actually think about what to do at that point. You're sort of just putting, like icing over a mud cake, as we sometimes say, trying to cover up what's already a disaster. It's that preparation, as you're saying, like to be in that place of preempting and being on the forefront of what the anxiety or the needing to cope or the stress, those sort of things.
Right, exactly. And just being aware that self-awareness was key. Yeah. And for me, I really became isolated. And so isolated and drinking and not having healthy ways of working through things, again, just continued to deteriorate as I, kept trying to figure out how I could get through some of the circumstances and situations that I was in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to talk more about that, because I know it is something that so many of us find ourselves in. It's really, these crisis moments, these ways of coping. And I think many of us wait till we're in crisis or at that point, or the stress, or have lost jobs or really broken, before we then go and find mindfulness. I'm sure people will be inspired today to really be on the front foot of getting these things built into their life, to be able to deal with these inevitable crises that come along with life, But anyway, we're going to get a bit more into that. But I want to know for you, what does confidence or being a confident woman mean to you?
For me, I am at my most confident self when I am aligning my behaviors with what I value. Right. So the understanding of what are my core personal values and how do my behaviors correlate with what I hold as values. And that's when I'm able to more easily adapt in circumstances that might be unprovoked or an unexpected occurrence. Yeah. And for me, that's when I feel my most confident, is when there's alignment between what I value and what my behavior looks like. Yeah.
So you're really it's like that authenticity, isn't it? It's like you're being true to who you are and what you believe. So no matter what's going on outside of you're proud of the way you're dealing with the situation in line with who you want to be. Right. And it's always a bit of practice, I find.
Always. It is. It's a journey, life's a journey, and there are peaks and valleys in all of our journeys. And it's knowing what we do at the top that will help us when we get down to the bottom after the next crisis comes through, because we're not exempt from it. No. So we're all going to have stuff that happens in our lives. And the more that we can be proactive and know what works for us, then the better prepared we are.
Yeah. And I always find I know when I've overstepped that mark, or when I haven't necessarily behaved in a way that is in line, because I can't stop thinking about it. Like, I know I've left that situation and I can't stop thinking about what I've said and how I could have done it better. And then I really just try to either go back and sort out what I made a mess of. I call it cleaning up my mess. If I've made a mess and I've said something that I shouldn't have said, or I've gone off the handle a little bit too quickly, or what have you. And then I go into really quickly about forgive myself. So I'm learning. I'm always going to sometimes find the boundary and sometimes overstep it. But it's if you're the majority of your time is trying to manage that and stay true to who you are and what you believe, then
yes.
And even the most confident woman stuff it up and so you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We all do. So, all right. So you've mentioned that the loss of your sense of self after you lost a job, a close friend, and your marriage, which was essentially a loss of confidence and a lack of belief in yourself. And that all led to the alcohol addiction. How did alcohol fill this void for you? And when did you realize that you were using it as a coping mechanism and that it just had to stop?
What it did for me was made me numb. So while I was attempting to numb the bad feelings, I didn't want to feel depressed.
Yeah.
I didn't want to feel the shame and the guilt and the loneliness and all the feelings, all the hard stuff. I wanted it to all go away.
Yeah.
So I could drink to forget about it. But the reality is that it doesn't go away.
No.
It was still there the next day.
Yeah. And
I would wake up and be even more ill-equipped to handle it the next day.
Yeah.
And that's what addiction does to our brain, is it makes us think that it's working.
Yes.
And I made that attempt to keep it working for a very long time, and it didn't sink in for me until, as you mentioned in the intro, 5 hospitalizations is what it took for me to have kind of that wake up moment and realize that it was making things worse.
Yeah.
And nothing was going to get better until I got better.
Yeah.
And made it work from the inside out.
Yeah. And had you looked at different strategies along that path, and then like, I'm trying this, and then you went back to the alcohol, and what was the sort of that last break? What was the change in, maybe the attempts beforehand to try to get sober or cope or learn mindfulness?
Yes.
What was the change the last time? Was it just a rock bottom of?
That's part of it. Absolutely. And in the past, you're right. I had, I would say, I'm going to quit today. Today's this is day 1.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, I would forget the resolve, and I would again, turn to what I had always turned to.
Yeah.
And the most recent hospitalization, which, as you mentioned, was back in February of 2020, I was in the hospital and in intensive care for a week.
Right.
And on the day that I was getting out of the hospital, I was meeting with the doctor, and he sat me down and looked me right in the eye and said, "You have 2 choices." And just the way he was speaking to me, it was like, very direct, very kind of in my face.
Yeah.
And he said, "You can keep drinking and you will die."
Yeah.
And I had heard something similar before, you keep drinking and your liver is going to continue to fail and your pancreas will, all the stuff. But the way he put it, you keep drinking, you will die, or you can stop drinking and have a shot at improving your life.
Right.
And something just clicked.
Yeah.
And, I was 49 years old, and my 2 sons were becoming fabulous young men, college students. And I just realized it was kind of like looking my own mortality in the eye.
Yeah.
And realizing I'm not done yet.
Yes.
There's much more that I want to contribute to this world. And I'm not ready to allow this substance to control my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it interesting that we all hear things about alcoholism and drugs and prescription, and we all hear things, and we still go, oh, it'll be fine. Well,
right.
That doesn't apply to me, or I'm not there yet, or whatever. And then we get to these points. But isn't it interesting how the same information can be delivered by different people and then something stick? That doctor, as you said, you've heard it so many times before in different forms or what have you, but the delivery that he gave was the last straw that you heard. You actually heard it at that point.
I did. And from that point forward, I was discharged from the hospital, and I started an intensive outpatient rehab program. So that consisted of 9 hours of counseling, in-person group sessions, and one-on-one sessions with a substance abuse counselor. And then in the US, COVID hit and we were locked down.
It's like 2020 for you. It's like 2020 was the year anyway, let alone trying to.
Right.
I know when I read February 20, I was like, oh my God, we're all going into lockdown February, like from March 2020. And then we're all drinking more because we're all stuck at home. Right. And you had to manage sobriety through that time.
Right. And it was at that time that I really started knowing that to make this work, to stay committed to the promise that I made to myself, I needed to utilize every possible tool that was out there. So I did a lot of researching, and that's what led me back to rediscovering and redefining my values. Yeah. I also connected with a program and a book called This Naked Mind. And the author of that program is Annie Grace. Okay. And I've connected with different coaches, and I've become a mentor in that program. And it has a very strong focus on mindset and community/connection. Yeah. And that for me just continued to move me one step along my journey and recommit to that journey every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And connection has been talked about so much through COVID because we all lost so much of it and realized just how important that is to all our mental health, our daily lives, and connecting through the way we did telephones and Zoom, and not being able to hug your grandchildren and not being able to hug your friend and not being able to sit and really connect. The difference was significant for so many people. So it brought it to a lot of us to realize how important maintaining that connection with people and talking things through and, that sort of stuff, how much it makes a difference to who we are.
And it's also looking beyond what's right in front of you. So I had to be creative, and, I couldn't let myself fall victim to yet another excuse. Yes. And say, oh, well, it's COVID, it's a pandemic. Yeah. So
what else am I going to do at 4:00 in the afternoon? Right. Of course I'm going to drink,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it is, once I had that resolve, was to surrounding myself with all the resources and all the online programming, all the virtual Facebook groups, all the online meetings, everything that I could to keep me grounded in my choice to stay sober.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Really, really inspiring, because it was such a challenging time for so many people. And then to manage already coming out of the challenges you were and then walking into that challenge was a big effort. So after all the adversity you've experienced and through all of the challenges, I think it's safe to say that you have transformed yourself. So when are you the most confident version of yourself now?
Again, when I'm consistent with my values, that's really where it begins internally for me. But the ability to have the courage and the support in sharing my story, knowing that whether it's a substance abuse or a struggle that someone's facing, even if it's, they're addicted to social media or whatever it is in their life that they're using as a coping mechanism, if it's an opportunity for them to question their relationship with that item, whether it's alcohol or whether it's media or what, food is certainly another one.
Yes.
Just to question and to look at it from an awareness perspective.
Yeah.
That's when I feel confident that I made the right choices, and that gives me the confidence to continue to make the right choices as I move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes an incredible amount of courage. When I read your story, and I was like, wow, it does take so much courage and confidence to be open and authentic about the types of things you've experienced in your life and your story. And so many people experience this, and it's shameful for them and they don't talk about it. But then when we do, you realize there's so much learning for people. It is challenges that we all tend to face. So we know that courage and confidence do fluctuate throughout all our podcasts and throughout all our programs. We are always talking about building a foundation of confidence, because it is going to fluctuate. I'm a confident woman, and I have days that I am not a confident woman, right?
Right, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
It's an ongoing process. So, when did you have really low confidence, and is there a specific confidence building technique that you then use and continue to use now to build your confidence back whenever it sort of slips or you feel like it's lower than you need it to be?
I will do yoga poses.
Okay.
And certainly that's not that, I'm in a public setting and will all of a sudden start breaking out in yoga
bit of a
poses.
downward dog in the middle of the shopping center.
Right, exactly. That's not going to happen. However, there's a lot of breathing techniques that I've learned from yoga that help me really get re-centered in myself. And thankfully, I have a strong community of friends and, just my own personal mentors and support teams that kind of are my champions. And really, and those, because there's moments every single day that I have to sometimes dig really deep and just not let myself dwell on the past.
Yeah.
You can learn the lessons from the past without getting stuck there.
Absolutely.
So you kind of, you extract what we learned from it, and then we apply that to similar situations, as we move ahead. And so it's not being afraid to say, wow, I'm really stuck in this. I cannot get this out of my head. I think I'm overthinking this. I don't know why this thought keeps popping into my brain, and I just can't get rid of it. And so it's that self-awareness of knowing it, but it's also knowing that I can't be afraid and don't have a reason to be afraid to admit it.
Yeah.
And to turn to a friend and say, hey, can you help me talk through this?
Yeah.
And know that that's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's, we talk a lot through all our sort of podcasts and programs about the importance of the people around you, because they're going to make or break you, really. Like, you need those people that you can call on and just talk it through, or that person that when you're on a low day, that they're going to be that cheer squad. They're going to be on your side and doing whatever it needs. Because if you connect with the people who are also bitterly critical about the world and negative and, and they're a dime a dozen, you can find them easily. You just both start on the spiral down. It gets worse and worse. You really need to know that person that's going to pull you out of it, even if they have to straight talk you and go, listen, you're overthinking this by a mile. Like, move on. My business partner, Anastasia, does this for me all the time, because often she comes into our office and I'm like, oh my God, this is and she's like, really, we don't have long to work together today. Is this going to take long, or can we fast track the whinging and just get on with it, But you need those people to really be that wind underneath you, to be pushing you along and helping you get through those times, and knowing that you can call on them when you can't do a downward dog in the middle of the shopping center.
Yes, exactly. And I think to your point, knowing that if I've chosen wisely the people that I invite into my space or part of my tribe, that they're going to love me anyway.
Yeah.
That, no matter what I'm dealing with, that's not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe what type of person you are.
Yeah.
You just, they're not going to shun me. No. They're not going to turn me away. I've got business partners and I've got close friends that I just know that even if I say, wow, I really screwed that up and I'm sorry, they're not going to turn me away if I need and truly want their input and invite their input also.
Yes. And isn't that a key point? Because it's asking for that input when so often we get input that is not asked for.
Oh, yes, we do.
We do,
absolutely.
Right? And it's really making that distinction of whose opinion or whose support you're asking for, and not just receiving the people who decide they want to turn up and tell you what they think at the time. So there's a clear distinction we need to make in that, and be very conscious about those choices of who we have in our world, because it's, it is so important. And as I said, it can make or break your life and your happiness and your success. So, make it a conscious decision. In our course, I say, I've had parenting advice from people who aren't parents. I got business advice from family members who had never run a business in their life. Like, people sometimes feel like it's helping, I guess, but thought I've got to take a step back sometimes and go, really? Did they know? Or is this hearsay? Have they read it? You have to be onto it all the time. So, speaking of business, you run a business called Mindful Leadership, and there's a great line on your website that says, leadership is everyday people making extraordinary things happen. And I loved it when I read that. I really think that's so true. So the concept of leadership is not relevant only in the workplace, but really in all areas of our lives. So with this in mind, what role do you think confidence plays in being an effective leader?
I think it's important for us as leaders, and I do believe leadership exists at every level, whether that's leadership from a family perspective or leadership in our communities or in our workplaces, organizations. And when we are able to connect who we are, so the essence, the self-awareness of our innate leadership qualities, and we continue to allow that to grow and to identify and work on that, but also connect it with what we do as a leader, that's when the magic happens. And I think for many of us, we'll assume that leadership doesn't really happen until we're the CEO or we're the president of a company, or we are making, $500,000 and we have the corner office of the penthouse level of the building. That doesn't mean where leadership, it's not exclusive to somebody at that level at all. It's more about what do we do on an everyday level that connects who we are as a leader with the behaviors and the actions and the decisions that we make.
Yeah, absolutely. And being at those levels with your corner office in the penthouse doesn't say you're a good leader either. It just
Right. Yep. You're right.
Yeah. So but I think absolutely, it's really the qualities of leadership in, as you're saying, your community or your family or what have you. So where does confidence then step into that? As far as is it coming from a place of really your belief in your values, and like what you were saying before about where you identify as being such a confident woman? Is it for leaders to really know that in themselves and find that, and then their leadership behavior is showing that? Do you think that's the link with the confidence?
Yes, exactly. And it goes back again to that insight or that self-awareness. That I know who I am as a leader, and knowing who I am, builds that foundation of confidence that you mentioned earlier. So when I know who I am, then the decisions and the actions become easier because they make sense.
Yes.
I'm not trying to decide, what do I do right here? I'm not at such a dire state of confusion and inaction because I'm more comfortable with what is in line with my values, because I know what those are.
Yeah.
And I know what those look like for me.
Yeah. And it's so important. I read a quote the other day I think it said, hang around with people committed to personal development because the conversation is different. And,
Yes.
Both Anastasia and I are very committed, and, my husband and I are very committed to personal development. We do a different program every year. That's our commitment, to just keep learning, keep discovering, keep changing, all different points of me aging, different challenges come in, different ideas. I'm now parenting teenagers. Like, you've got to stay on that learning and discovering and finding better ways. Not even better, but, more effective ways to do things, and ideas change. I find it really almost hard to understand how people that aren't really getting to know themselves and learning those values and aligning that really cope without doing that, because it takes so much work, but the rewards are so great.
You put the time in one way or another.
Yes.
So either you invest the time in your personal growth and development at the front end of a situation, or chances are you spend a lot more time, a lot more money, a lot more struggle when you don't know who you are.
Yes.
And you're grasping at all of these attempts to try to deal with the situation at hand.
Yeah.
So you're gonna make the time.
Yes.
If you choose to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's just how and where and when do you choose to invest that type of energy and time?
Yeah, great point. I think that's true. It's like being on that, what we're talking about at the very beginning with your mindfulness. It's like having that stuff in the preparation time rather than at the end in the, oh my God, my life's gone to hell and now I've got to try and fix it time, right?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, we all have negative thinking and self-doubt, and this can often set us back when we're trying to achieve something, especially if we've already been in a low or dark place and we've had to rebuild ourselves before. So what do you do to now manage these feelings when you feel those creeping up on you?
I will admit them. I'll acknowledge them, and I'll kind of almost investigate, what is this feeling? I'll name it. Why am I feeling embarrassed right now? Or why am I feeling nervous right now? And I'll try to I'll acknowledge it first of all, but then, like you, I've got a wonderful business partner named Dusty that I turn to very frequently. She's also a business owner, and she is 7 years in recovery. So we are able to connect on a variety of different ways. So she's definitely somebody. And even my kids, my son's in college, they've seen me and thankfully have supported me through some really great moments and some really not so great moments.
Yeah.
And I value their perspective because they know what our family history looks like.
Yeah.
And so although I don't always listen to them, just in the same way they don't always listen to me, I do invite their input. Yeah. Because I do feel that it's a way for me to hear it and see it through their eyes. But again, I am blessed with a wonderful community of friends and just, supporters and my champions, my tribe.
Yeah.
And, I'll often say how much I love my people.
Yeah.
And I really do. I have some pretty amazing people that I am able to connect with on a daily basis.
Yeah, great. Because it is the negative thinking, the self-doubt can take over at very unexpected times. You just wake up going, why am I feeling like this? But I think it's so great, that acknowledgement and then just analyze, well, what's happened? Why am I feeling like this? What is going on? To try to come out of that, rather than letting, I say to my clients, you're on the negative thinking wormhole and there's no light at the end of this tunnel. Like you're just going to go further down. You've got to stop. You've got to stop it. Don't just let the mind just keep going. It's not going to pull you out by yourself. You have to consciously change this thought pattern or change this negative thinking or change this moment. But the only way to do that is to first stop the momentum. And I think your point about really going, what is going on here? Like, why am I feeling that starts to stop it because you're in reflecting mode. And then you can start trying to get it back. Is there anything really to be fearful of? This is something new. That's why I'm feeling self-doubt. And wow, that's pretty normal. So that's okay. Those sorts of things. Rather than just spinning into the wormhole deeper and deeper and deeper, where it gets so much more challenging to pull yourself out the lower you go, right?
Yeah. And I think it's important to really look at what you just said about, sometimes we feel self-doubt and sometimes it is okay. That's natural. That's normal.
Yes.
And, when I do speaking opportunities, I still get nervous, but it's acknowledging that I'm nervous and acknowledging that it's okay to feel nervous.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would be more afraid of not feeling nervous before going into a situation like that, because I think if we're truly passionate and if we truly care about what we're doing, that's a good kind of stress. That gets us excited. That's the adrenaline. That's all the healthy chemicals that are doing their jobs and getting us in that moment or in that zone. So I do think what you say is, acknowledging that it's okay. This is okay to feel vulnerable right now or to feel disappointed right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I have the same thing with the speaking. And I refer to that a lot because there's some of us, you and I, Angie, that will get up in front of an audience, and other people that would rather die than get in front of an audience.
I know. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I talk to them about, they're like, but I feel so much fear before. And I'm like, I always feel that's part of the process. When we filmed our online course, we filmed an online course 2 years ago and then another one just at the beginning of this year. And it was such a different medium because there was no audience and no adrenaline and no fear. And it was me in front of a camera. And it took so long to learn this different. And at one point I said, Anastasia, we just have to hire a crowd for me to actually be able to do this. Because I was actually out of practice. Well, not out of practice. It was like a whole new way to learn to deliver content, because I was so used to those feelings of fear and doubt and adrenaline and all that. And I had learned how to manage that and deliver the performance or deliver the content. And then take that away, it was like, oh no, I need that back, But
I agree.
That's always there, and it's great for people to start to realize that they are the moment, because you're outside your comfort zone, and that's a great place to be, like a great place to be. So sometimes we want self-doubt and the negative thing. It's learning, which is what we do, learning the tools to implement when that starts to happen. As you said, you pull in on your mindfulness and all those sorts of techniques for you to use in the preparation leading up to that possibly anxious situation. Mm-hmm. And you get on the front foot of it. You get prepared for it.
Yep, I do.
Yeah, awesome. And what other thing? There's mindfulness and yoga, you said. Is there any other things that you found really work for you as techniques?
I will look at positive images or positive quotes. I will save graphics or memes or Instagram, and I'll keep that in my library on my phone. So if I am feeling that I need a boost in the middle of my day, or I've had a difficult conversation or heard something that might have been not something I wanted to hear, that's a way that I can very instantly feel a boost in my energy and in my spirit. And that sometimes will be all that it takes to kind of right my mindset again, and, kind of put it in a better frame of reference for me. So that's another kind of a quick tool that I will turn to also.
Yeah, it's like having those things on hand. We use playlists and things like that. I know I'll put on my Spotify playlist that you need those things ready to go. So when you're in the moment, when you're having a bad day, you can instantly put those into your world and start, turning it around.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Music is a one too.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, what would you say to someone who's currently feeling confused and low in confidence, and like that they've lost their sense of self because of maybe grief or addiction or divorce or career changes or any other, number of the chaotic life struggles that people experience on a day-to-day basis? What would you say to those people, and how to sort of take those first steps to bringing themselves out of that?
I will invite the conversation about what's important to them in their life. And what I'm getting at with that question is, do they have a sense of what they value? What are those fundamental beliefs? And sometimes, when we're in that deep, dark moment, if somebody at that time would have walked up to me and said, "Oh, Angie, what do you value?" I would have probably said something very inappropriate or walked away or any other kind of behavior. So it's not just going up to somebody and saying, "So tell me, Jody, what are your values?" When you're in the middle of some really deep muck at that time.
Yes.
But it's asking them to kind of think about, we all have an internal compass, and it's kind of that guiding North Star for us. And a lot of times we get lost, we lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to think about, if you were to redirect or reorient to what those compass points or what that North Star is in your life, what would that look like?
Yeah.
Family, love, joy, some of those more commonly held fundamental beliefs or values can often get them to start thinking about it, even if it's just planting a seed of what that foundation can grow from for the situation that they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about addiction, and where are the first steps to go when you start to realize it's damaging you, it's damaging your life, you can't continue? What was that first step for you that you took on to really get yourself out of that situation? Because I think so many of us, especially through COVID, I know the stats on how much we're all drinking and whatever, and our mental health has decreased. And we're all finding new ways to try to navigate this sort of, I guess, the new world that we're coming into. And it's changed. It has changed. Yeah. And with that means we have to change. We need to learn different ways to run our lives now, different ways to connect, different ways to cope with very challenging situations. What was those first steps for you?
Two of the first steps that I took were to make two lists. One was to write a list of as many reasons as I could think of why I drank.
Right.
Loneliness, the very long list. And then on the second list, it's reasons why I want to stop drinking.
Yeah.
And really getting a closer view at my why.
Yeah.
And remembering my why.
Yeah.
And for me, it was rediscovering who I am.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and it's very personal, what people pick for their own personal why. And I think for a long time, of course, I said for my family, for my kids.
Yeah.
But what I finally learned is that I had to do it for myself before I could do it for anybody else. Right. I had to love myself before I could be open to loving anybody else or feeling lovable.
Yeah.
I had to give that same compassion to myself before I could extend that to relationships, to partnerships, to friends, family, the people that are important in my life.
Yeah. So you went really to the self-work first. It had to be
I did.
It had to be about you getting back to who you were and loving who you were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was the difference in this time for being sober versus the hundreds of other times that I tried.
Yes. Yeah. It's so important, and it's such an important thing that we often overlook until we can't overlook it anymore, like until we're in crisis. And I think people are much more aware of their mental health, their strategies they're using now, because we've all around the world been thrown into chaos and confusion and things. So now more than ever, we need to be on that front foot and really taking care of ourselves. But really, as you're saying, get in touch with, how do I love me? How do I get back to who I am, what my values are, and really just be me and love me, and then I can be the best version of me for everybody else around me, especially us as women with our families and kids and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes, very much.
Awesome. All right, so now we're going to do our final Rise Women Power questions that we ask all our guests. So, Angie, what do you wish every woman knew?
Her values.
Yes. Wouldn't that be great? Great place to start, isn't it? Wouldn't if we all started there? We all knew our values. And what is your superpower? Although I think you'd have a long list of superpowers at this point.
Oh, wow.
But what do you?
Thank you. I say that sobriety is my superpower.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Amazing. That would be such an inspiration to people, because that as a superpower is what gives people the inspiration to step into that place and really take that on. Yes. Yep. Now, heels or flats? Are you a heels girl or a flats girl?
When I am in front of an audience, I choose to wear heels.
Yes, me too.
When I am sitting in my office, I choose to be barefoot.
Yes. Oh, you're a barefoot. We should add that. Heels, flats, or barefoot. We should add that.
Yes, very much. Yes.
Barefoot is good. Okay, what's your favorite quote or rule to live by?
My favorite quote is, there's several favorite quotes by Brene Brown, but the one that really resonates with me is that owning your story is the most brave thing you'll ever do. Yeah. And kind of parallel to that is that when we do own our story, we can choose to write a new ending. Yes. And so when I did that, I am still writing my ending as my life continues to move forward.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And who inspires you and why?
I'm not going to pick the obvious one of being my two kids. I'm going to say that my business partner, Dusty, is an inspiration to me because she has been down the path that I'm on. Yeah. And I turn to her frequently for her wisdom. She also gets me just on an emotional sense, on an intellectual level. And so she's someone that I would consider an inspiration.
Yeah, awesome. And finish this sentence, last one. If I had even more confidence than I do now, I would
own a bigger company and hire more employees.
I'm sure that's on its way. Absolutely. Oh, fantastic. Now, I want to call back on the quote you just said, because it is courageous to own your story. But I really want to say to you that it is even more courageous to share your story and have the courage and everything to put this out into the world, because owning your story, yes, and acknowledging that, but sharing your story like you've been doing makes such a big difference to people out in the world that might be struggling, that might identify, that might even not identify with you, but they connect on some level and they take the learning. We can only learn from people who go to that vulnerable place and share things about ourselves that are the struggles, that are maybe the not so great things we're proud of or what have you, because we are all there. We're all in these places at certain times. So I just want to thank you, Angie, for, yes, having the courage to own your story, but having even more courage to share your story and come on to the podcast today. I know it'll make a difference to people, to our listeners, and it's an important message that you're stepping into and sharing.
Thank you, Jody. I really appreciate your kindness. I value you and your work. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening today. And remember, there are so many ways that we can help you become the confident woman you've always wanted to be. So please get in touch or visit us at risewomen.com. We are on a mission to ensure that confidence is every woman's new normal. And we do that by getting our programs and resources out to as many women as we can. So until next time, remember, with confidence, anything is possible. Bye for now.